Guys, welcome back to the NFT Talks podcast. As usual, always have amazing guests, especially like guests when they're from the UK, because I'm biased like that, you know. But I've got two great guests on. I've got Lee and Lewis, and they are from Sonx, which is a music platform where you can listen to great music, support your artists, and engage and monetize, which is fantastic. And it's good to get obviously Lewis and Leon, because the backgrounds, which is very interesting, which is they bring something special to the space, which is not totally Web3, but they're bringing their experience into the space, and I'm expecting great things. So thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you for having us, man. It's great to be on NFT Talks, Sean.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So before we get into it, I always like to, how's everyone been? Like, how's things? How's the Web3 space keeping you? Because it's fast paced, a lot going on. Every day something's happening. So how's it been for you guys so far?
Sorry, Lee, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's a real change of pace from our background is well, we've got kind of different backgrounds, but there are commonalities. But I think our most recent experience was at a corporate, and it was fairly slow paced. And jumping into Web3, as you said, it's so fast paced. It's unbelievable. It's amazing because we're both doers. We like to get things done. We like to action things. And it's so kind of refreshing being in a space where everyone else seems to be on that same level as well.
I love that. What about you, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting in terms of the characters that you meet compared to the traditional space that I've been in. I would say, I kind of sometimes get described as eccentric, but compared to some of the people that I've met in Web3, I'm quite basic. And so, yeah, it's really been interesting, sort of more than anything, meeting the people in Web3, and everyone seems to have a purpose behind what they're doing, which has been really exciting. It's sort of, they're really in this with a real intention, which is great. So yeah, it's been cool getting to understand the way that Web3 currently is.
Yeah, and obviously music is something that is literally, I think it's the next big thing. I mean, I know there's a lot of projects, but I feel like music is really going to take off. And I think it's an industry that hasn't really been touched on for many years in regards to disruption since streaming. But with Web3, empowering creators and basically distributing the money that can be made across from fans to artists, which I think is really interesting. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Before we get into the platform, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what do you think NFTs are going to do for the music industry? And we'll start with Lewis, and because I've got to direct it, and otherwise you get two of you answering at the same time.
Right. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. Like looking at what has been done and is kind of being done right now in the Web3 space for music, it's kind of, everyone seems to be very, very focused on master rights, like owning of the tracks, right? And from my experience when I was at Sony, it's kind of it's something like we were looking at the blockchain, and the first obvious use case is kind of like, oh, okay, right, master rights, ownership, payments, okay. And I looked at that and I was just like, this is really exciting. But then immediately it became apparent that in order to introduce a system like that, everyone, I mean, from the smallest independent label all the way up to the majors, would have to agree on what that is right from day one. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. And anyone that's worked in the music industry will know getting the majors to agree on anything, let alone AIM and all the other kind of smaller companies, is a nightmare on anything, like absolutely anything, let alone something so fundamental as how they make their money. So for me, that was it was interesting to see that that's where everyone went. But I think one day it might happen. But I think right now, when Web3 is still in its infancy, I think there's a lot of better opportunities for musicians, like, fandom, content, identity, things like that.
Right. Well, what's your thoughts, Lee? Because obviously you come from a music background too also.
Yeah, I think from my side, obviously, Lewis kind of spoken like on the technical sort of point of view. My view is more about the shift in power that Web3 allows for artists and the opportunity for them to get some of that power back. You know, I remember I was at NFT LA and I was listening to one of the artists who was saying that prior to her using NFTs to pay for her career, she was saying that she was living in a car and she, you know, had tried to get signed and she had been signed and that it never worked out. But, you know, now that she's been able to build a community and use NFTs to continue to produce her music and make music and live off her music, she's basically a millionaire. And so she, you know, listening to her story about, you know, how much she felt empowered by being able to have a hand in her future was really inspiring to me. And so I think more than anything, it's going to really push everybody within the music industry to think about what their role is in an artist's career. How are they really, you know, impacting it positively or negatively? Because now the artist has an opportunity to create income so that they can make better choices on how they want to, you know, move forward with their career.
Yeah. Tell me if you guys agree. I feel like Web3, for years, the biggest contributors have missed out. They've lost, the creators don't make a lot of money, especially when it comes to streaming. And then the fans, they just get the end product, but they don't make any more. But without the fans and without the creator, nothing happens. So who's making all the money? Who's one? That's so like, no one's ever questioned that. But I feel until this is actually being put in front of me and seeing these opportunities being created, I've never really ever looked at that.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, Sean, the fact is, you know, when we look at the history of music or the music industry, you know, I think what happened was, you know, after Napster, people did really go into survival mode. And it was kind of like, how do we, you know, monetize music in a way that makes sense? And I don't think streaming services are ever going to go away. I think they are the foundation of the music economy at the moment. But what my point of view is that there's so much more that could be made in this economy. We can make this economy so much bigger. So there are so many other winners. It's not about necessarily replacing what's out there. It's about saying that there is way more opportunity to do things better and also allow it to benefit more people.
Yeah, okay, I agree. You want to add to that? You want to add anything to that, Lewis?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Lee's absolutely right. For me, like, you know, I guess we'll get into this when we talk more about the platform, but for me, it always felt like, you know, there are, like, fans are treated as this homogeneous mass. It's like, oh, this artist fan base behave in this way. And you hear, you know, marketing people and people at labels and talking in those terms. Mm-hmm. And it's quite absolutist. It's quite, okay, this artist fan base is this, or will do this, or like this. And it's nonsense, because any large mass of people have, you know, different idiosyncrasies and different ways of behaving. You can subdivide fan groups by, you know, intensity of fandom, like, you know, casual or fanatic, and, you know, everything in between. And, you know, the way they are both marketed to, but also monetized, because they're treated as this homogenous mass, is kind of the same. I think that's a mistake. And I think with the kind of the interesting kind of identity opportunities and community opportunities that Web3 creates, I think it makes it a lot easier to figure out how to subdivide those. And it's not just fans of artists, it's any kind of mass of people, how to subdivide those and then service them better. Because by not servicing each subgroup of your fans in the way that they should really be spoken to and treated, you are leaving money on the table.
Yeah, and that, I think that's happened for years. I mean, I think everyone's under the impression that you need millions of fans to have a career as a creative in any way, whereas there's always that tribal. If you've got that 1,000 hardcore fans that support you and you connect with them, then there's an opportunity for you to monetize. But I feel that there's been that disconnect from the artists to the fans. I mean, so I don't know if you guys agree with that. I always love a challenge if that isn't the case. But what's your thoughts? Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. So I think what you're referring to is that Kevin Kelly article, right? The 1,000 True Fans thing. That's like actually a massive influence on one of the many influences, but you know, a big part of what we took into ideating the Sonx platform and how it works. Because, you know, and back to my point about artists leaving money on the table, it is, if you're, you know, if you have even 100, you know, but especially 1,000 true fans, if they're, you know, on the higher end of that kind of fan behavior, if they're the fanatics, for example, if you're monetizing them efficiently, you don't need any other fans. You might have them, and you might be able to monetize those in other ways, like, you know, sort of more passively, like Spotify or whatever. But if you are effectively monetizing the most hardcore of your fans, you know, and monetization can sometimes sound sort of exploitative, and that's, you know, that's not what I'm talking about. It's giving them value, because they have more money in their pockets that they would want to spend if the opportunity to do it was there and it made sense and it was something that they wanted. And that's what I mean about servicing those fans efficiently. If you were doing that as an artist, if you were able to do that, to identify who they were, which actually is one of the biggest challenges in the first place for an artist, because they don't own the data. So to be able to identify who they are and then to be able to service them efficiently, that would be a career. You would make a living out of that. And that would actually give you a lot more freedom. And I think also, you know, there's nothing online that lets artists do that, that's specifically geared towards that. Social media kind of goes a bit of the way, but it's a homogeneous mass, and it's difficult to pick out the kind of, you know, the quality relationships. It's very challenging for artists to do that, but also the way that fans behave. There's nothing that really reflects how the fans behave in real life as well. Like, and this is the other thing. A bit of a tangent now. Apologies, but you know, if you think about how fans behave in real life, you know, let's say they're going to a concert, right? You know, the first thing they'll do, fans will go to, like, you know, smaller concerts, and then they'll tell all of their friends when this band gets bigger, oh, I was there first. I was there before. We all do. Like, I can see you're smiling, right? Because we all do it. It's a bit of a kind of crappy thing to do, but we all do it, right? You know, and they'll get, like, you know, a plectrum or a set list or a drumstick or something, some little trinket from the band, you know, and they'll keep their ticket stub or their wristband or whatever the kind of, you know, the ticket sort of form factor is, and they'll have this little shrine almost in their bedroom of, like, ticket stubs and, you know, wristbands and set lists and all these little bits and, you know, signed pictures and whatever the hell it is, you know, and there's nothing online that lets you do that, nothing. You know, and the fans that behave like that are the ones that fit into this kind of, you know, hardcore fan group that, you know, that I'm talking about. And it was always weird to me. I mean, this isn't a new idea, but I kind of came through, you know, artist management and promotion into kind of tech and the music industry. And, like, the whole time it seemed weird to me that there was nothing catering to that online. It was just like, why doesn't that exist? Yeah. So I guess those are the two things, like artists being able to identify and service those hardcore fans, and actually having a value proposition for those hardcore fans that makes sense to what they're doing in the real world.
Yeah, and this is something that you guys have clearly identified and almost looking to create the solution for that in Web3. So before we get into, obviously, Sonx, I always like to, because your docs teams are so important, people showing their faces, what their backgrounds, can they deliver and what they're going to say. That's also important. Say, pre-2022, that wasn't a problem, but now people are actually looking at that. So I'd love to hear your guys' backgrounds first, and, like, first of all, what you've been doing for the last, say, 10 years or so, or probably longer than that, and then how did you find yourself working together to create this platform? So start with Lee, like, tell me a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so, you know, first of all, I never wanted to work in the music industry. It wasn't something that I was looking to do in any way. And I'll tell you a bit about how I ended up at Sony Music. But I started wanted to be a fashion editor. So I went to fashion BTech, did a fashion BTech. My last year there, I ended up doing an internship at Cosmopolitan magazine. I came back with an attitude and basically was like, they don't do any of this stuff here, so I'm never going to go to university. So I ended up going, okay, I'm going to take 2 years that I would have done university interned at, like, Harper's Bazaar, Vogue, etc. Realized how much editors actually made, as in money, and I was like, that's not going to work for me. So then I ended up doing fashion PR for a while at a luxury e-commerce company called matchesfashion.com. I will always say that fashion, although people see it as frivolous as an industry, it's one of the best sort of training I ever had, because it's really an industry where you are working on many different things at the same time, but you also have to get it right. And the standard is really high. And I've been able to sort of take that into everything else I'm doing, including what I'm doing now. I ended up working at a startup for a while called Skinny Dip. They sent me to New York for 2 years. And part of what I was there was to launch them in America and launch 2 stores, one in the World Trade Center and one in downtown Soho. And then after that, I was kind of like done talking about handbags, done talking about clothing. What can I do next? Ended up working at a talent agency called Intertalent, where I used to manage Clara Amfo from Radio 1, Patricia Bright, who's, you know, a massive YouTuber, Nicola Adams, who's a gold medalist, and Montana Brown from Love Island, so a good assortment there. And what happened was, I think I would still be doing that if the guy who owned the agency didn't make some really bad business decisions. And so when he did, the girls sort of wanted to distance themselves from him, and they all ended up leaving. So I had done a podcast deal with Sony Music for Clara, and the guys at Sony really liked me and what I was doing, and so asked me to come and lead their talent division. And what that meant was not looking after the artists in the building, but working with talent outside of the building on artist campaigns. So that was everything from influencer campaigns to, you know, if an artist needed a presenter to do a Q&A about what their album's about, to an album launch party. So the scope was wide, which was great, because I got to work with lots of different artists, and I was introduced to lots of different genres of music. But I guess what led me to Sonx was the fact that, you know, I guess I was an outsider to the music industry because of, you know, it wasn't something that I was searching to do. Because I was an outsider, I guess I questioned what the status quo was. And really it was the pandemic that, you know, really, I guess, encouraged me to move forward with this, because, you know, I started seeing independent signed artists on Instagram saying they had no money. And I found that to be really weird. So when I looked at their streams, I was like, well, you have 500,000 streams. How do you not have any money? And when I continued to dig, I realized that 500,000 streams is like £2,000. And, you know, if you're signed, 85% of that goes to the label. And then the 15% that you keep, you've got to pay your band, your makeup artist, your manager, etc. So you could end up with £5 in the end. Right. And so I started seeing these artists off their own back going and using platforms like Bandcamp and OnlyFans and Patreon. And I felt that there was something that we could create that was a little bit sexier, not problematic, but also helped artists to sort of learn more about their fans as well. Obviously, I have no technical ability. You just heard about my whole career. I can't code. And so I started thinking about, you know, I was approaching developers, and a lot of them, you know, God love them, didn't want to turn on their cameras, was hard to have a conversation with. And so I was like, this is not going to work for what I'm trying to do, and certainly not for my kind of personality. So, you know, I was working with Lewis at Sony, and I stalked his LinkedIn, realized he'd been at Sony for 5 years. I wanted to leave after 2 years. And so I was like, you've been here double the time. You must really want to leave. And so I told him what I wanted to do. And luckily, he really, you know, liked it. And I kind of see Lewis as a unicorn in the sense that obviously he's got an amazing technical background, but also really cares about the fan experience and music as a whole. And that's something that I was going to find really hard to find in, you know, in a partner. So yeah, I'll let Lewis talk about sort of his background and the things that he brought to Sonx, which is why it's where it is today.
Yeah, cheers. So I mean, I was always interested in like computers as a kid, and I remember, you know, I went to a state school, and they well, for the latter part of my education, and the IT course there was like useless. And also you had to stay on after school on a Friday, and it was only half a GCSE, and it was all like Excel and Microsoft Publisher. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't care. Yeah, I was just completely unmotivated to do that. But I still wanted to learn this stuff, right? Like, well, not that specifically, but like, you know, I wanted to figure out, like, the internet was really interesting to me. I wanted to figure out how websites were made and all the rest of it. So when I was like 15, 16, I actually taught myself coding at home after school. 2 days a week, I'd spend like a couple of hours twice a week and kind of taught myself web development. So it was, you know, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, was kind of the basics. You know, and then I kind of kept that with me, like, as I was going through college, and, you know, I went to university for a bit and did journalism, which didn't pan out, and I dropped out, but that's another story. But I kind of kept the web development with me, and sort of did, you know, freelance on the side or whatever, whenever I needed money. It kind of felt like this tap that I could open, which was great. It was a very fortunate position to be in. You know, but obviously through doing that, you know, I learned a lot. Like if I found a client and they wanted something, that I didn't know how to do, I'd just say yes and figure it out while I was doing it. I hope they don't listen to this, but yeah, you know, but that's how you do things. That's how you figure things out. So I kind of kept that with me, but then that gave me the freedom to kind of do, you know, in terms of career, university and jobs and all the rest of it, kind of whatever I was interested in, as opposed to what was kind of expedient and made the most sense. You know, it was all less pragmatism and more interest and intrigue, right? So I started a music website. As I said, I was doing a journalism degree, and I started a music website, like reporting on gigs and concerts and stuff. To be completely honest with you, it was just a way to kind of get free tickets to concerts while I was at university, because, you know, students are always skinned, right? And the concept was, this was when MP3s were king, right? And it was just like, you get a free MP3. You know, with every interview or feature that we do, we'd take a track from the artist and say, we're going to give this away for free. But to get it for free, you had to sign up to the mailing list, right? So if you were logged in, you could just download it. If you weren't, you'd have to sign up. And this is before GDPR. You could be a bit more, you know, you could push the envelope a bit more with data like that. But anyway, you know, it blew up. We built this enormous mailing list. We knew what artists they liked. We ended up doing press at, like, you know, festivals, you know, Reading, Benicassim. We're kind of all over the place. I just wanted a couple of free tickets to like something at Brixton Academy, you know, but it really blew up. Ended up with a team of like 7 writers. We were doing video content before anybody was really doing that. It was great. It was really good fun. Never made any money out of it, and that really wasn't the goal. But what happened then, I kind of fell into event promotion. So Notting Hill Arts Club, you know, I was talking to them, and they were like, "Oh, we need someone to book Death Disco," which had been, you know, it used to be Alan McGee's night, been running for years. It's a really famous night, but it kind of hit the skids because Alan had retired. So I started booking that. You know, that was really fun. And then I did event promotion for a few years, and then kind of fell into artist management. Started an artist management company, had about 7 different artists over a period of about 5 years. But, you know, by this point, I was kind of 27 years old, not really making huge amounts of money. And I was kind of like, I should probably get a real job. And like the whole time while I was doing all of this, I was still doing web development on the side, like for my artists, for the brands of the nights that I was doing, for random clients as well, kind of all this stuff, you know. And, you know, eventually I was like, yeah, I should probably get a real job. So I went and got a job at this agency, and it was just soul destroying, you know. Absolutely hated it. Like web development job, sorry, an agency, hated it. But then this job at Sony came up for a web developer at Sony Music, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a good mix of like my interests, right? Let's have a go at that. Got the job, ended up getting promoted to lead web developer relatively quickly, and that's where I met Lee, obviously, and that's where he kind of came to me with this idea for Sonx. So my background and what I bring to Sonx, obviously, you know, apart from the tech side, is a kind of an understanding of the music business from, I guess, like more of an independent artist point of view, and also like from my time, especially as a promoter, but kind of the whole time, really like personally, I really obsess over the behavior of fans, like how they go about being a fan. Just blows my mind. Like I'm obviously, you know, we're both huge music fans as well, but that always really interests me. So that was, you know, Lee came to me with this idea, and initially it was, you know, as he said, kind of like a premium content platform, something along the lines of like OnlyFans, Patreon, obviously without being problematic or kind of dusty like Patreon is, right? But you know, I was like, well, it's great, but I don't feel that it's unique enough, like alongside those brands. But at the time, what I was doing, I was researching the blockchain and NFTs for Sony, and kind of educating the business on, well, one of the people that was educating the business on how that would work and how it would apply to the music industry. You know, and I was like, let me think about how this could work for fans, because I really liked Lee's idea and I really wanted to work with Lee, but I just didn't see where the value proposition was for fans. But so that's when, you know, I started thinking around like, you know, how we could create this value chain that worked for both the artists and the fans, and you know, that's where we started working together. That's when we both realized there was really something in this, and the rest is history.
So that's the great combination to form obviously Sonx. Like, let's get into the platform. What is Sonx? Tell me about it. I mean, we can mingle between the both years. You can bounce off the back of each other, but obviously, Lee, you can start, and then we'll just go. So I'll ask questions as we go along.
Yeah, so, you know, primarily Sonx is an opportunity for artists to create additional revenue from their core fan base and build a community around that fan base by exclusive content, NFTs, and physical merch. But also what it allows the fans to do is to earn off of their engagement. And so we are super focused in taking the current model, which is a fan base, and transitioning into a community. And, you know, a fan base is sort of one way. It's sort of the artist always taking from the fan. a community is reciprocal. So, you know, when people are always talking about, you know, the attention economy being so saturated, I think the next step is the fact that people are going to have to be paid for their attention. Yeah. And these are people that want to be there. And these are people that are subscribed to Sonx because they're a huge fan of that artist. What we're doing is rewarding them with Sonx coin and NFTs for their engagement. And, you know, it's without saying that they're probably going to spend that Sonx coin with the artist that they're subscribed to. And so you start to have this sort of reciprocal behavior, which I'm talking about. But Lewis can talk more about the marketplace, which I always sort of hand over to him.
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, I mean, just to kind of scene set a little bit. So Sonx is very much a kind of a Web3 platform dressed up as a Web 2.0 platform, right? And this is very much a factor of like, there's a lot of Web3 platforms that are like, if you're not a crypto native and if it's your first foray into Web3, you're not going to understand. Yeah. And obviously that's not the route that we wanted to go down. We wanted to have basically a Web 2.0 offering that was compelling enough for people to want to sign up regardless of who they were, and kind of by using the platform, they can learn how Web3 works. So it's as much a kind of almost like a learning platform as much as it is a content and fandom platform. But, you know, what happens with the NFTs, rather than buying them, and I think, you know, again, back to kind of like fan behavior, that there aren't any fans that are buying NFTs in the current ways that they're being marketed. I mean, if you look at like what Grimes did, and she made, I think it was like $5 or $6 million in like a few minutes selling NFTs. That's just one example. You know, and I think the most expensive one was like 400 grand or slightly under, and the cheapest one was like 7 grand or something. It's like, your fans aren't buying those. Your fans are not, they don't have that kind of disposable income. That is investor behavior. So what you're doing is you're cutting your fans, you're cutting your fans out of a value chain that benefits people who are already rich for a short-term cash injection that doesn't benefit your career long-term. Nobody wins except the investor, not even the artist. The artist wins short-term, obviously. You know, so it's like that, to me, that just doesn't make any sense, right? And again, like for the fan, there's no value proposition. So it's like, well, how can we make this make sense? Because the problem is, if you make the NFTs kind of, you know, cheaper, right, and there's still value in them, and there's just, you know, they're just a little bit more affordable, what you'll start to get is just a load of scalpers, right? You'll get bots buying them up, waiting until they increase in value and then selling them. So it's like, right, okay, well, how can we create this value chain, freeze out the scalpers and delight the fans and make it make sense for the artist, right? So this is what we were taking on. So where the NFTs come in, you know, once a fan gets access to an artist community, which is via these, you know, content subscriptions, any purchases that they make within that community, it could be tickets, it could be physical merchandise, it could be digital merchandise. They come with a free NFT. So it's essentially a digital version of the thing that you purchase. So when we come back to, you know, what I was talking about, the shrine in the fan's bedroom, they have these like all the ticket stubs and the wristbands, right? So let's say you buy, you know, a ticket, right? When the artist, you get an NFT, which is like a digital ticket stub. When the artist lists a show on Sonx, the venue capacity is taken into account. And we have a very simple algorithm that figures out the best way to define the rarity of the NFTs that come with it. So say, for example, like I'm going to use a ridiculous example, but it shows it really, really well. Imagine you have a venue with a capacity of 1,111, right? Which it sounds like a random number, but it'll make sense when I go through this. What the algorithm will do is say, okay, well, there's 1 of 1, there's 10 1 of 10s, there's 100 1 of 100s, and 1,000 1 of 1000s, right? And then the way that you get the rare ones, it's about speed of acquisition. The first person to buy a ticket for that show through Sonx will get the 1 of 1. The next 10 will get the 1 of 10. The next 100 get a 1 of 100, and so on and so forth. And this algorithm figures out the optimum way to divide out the rarity at the point that it's listed. So the artist doesn't need to go and mint these NFTs, right? When the show is listed, the system just figures it out and mints them for them. They can upload, you know, the artwork and the things that they want. They have control over the visual aspects, the things that they'll, you know, inherently understand. But the tech of how that works, the system takes care of it. And then these NFTs are held in a wallet until such time as they're required, right? So then someone buys it. When you sign up for Sonx, you get your own wallet the same way you would with like Coinbase or Binance. There's a wallet built into your account. You know, you acquire this NFT as soon as you buy the ticket, and it's the same with a piece of merchandise. Say you're buying a hoodie, right? It's the same thing. When the hoodie is listed, the amount available goes into this algorithm. The NFTs are minted. When you buy one, you get the NFT as well, and that's immediate. Obviously, you know, a hoodie needs to be packed up and shipped out. It takes a few days to arrive, but you get this NFT for free. Now, I know what the question is going to be.
Okay, go on.
Where's the value? Where's the value in free NFTs, right? And am I right? Is that what the question was going to be?
I Oh no, initially I wasn't going to ask that. My question, I was going to make it very basic because I'm thinking, because you've said you subscribe, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like through NFTs, you buy an NFT and that's your subscription, or is it literally just subscribing as you would?
No, that's all just, you know, it's either fiat currency, you can pay with a card, or you can pay with
where are you stopping the scalping with the bots? How does that get?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the value in the NFT, and it's basically it's the same answer. So the question that I thought you were going to ask, the question you have asked, is actually the same answer. So the value of the NFTs is relatively small, you know, even if you get one because they're free, right? And it's this kind of side effect of the thing you actually wanted, which is the ticket, the hoodie, the whatever, right? So, you know, this thing that you don't even really understand if you're not a kind of Web3 native, right? You get this thing, you're like, oh, I don't care, I've got the ticket, that's all I wanted, right? Or I've got the hoodie, that's all I wanted. But what artists can do, the NFTs, rather than being, you know, don't think about them as an investor, think about them as an artist. They're packets of data. They allow the artist to look out into the community because the artist can see where all their NFTs are. It allows the artist to look out into the community and say, okay, well, you know, who are my biggest fans? Of my biggest fans, because the people there are all subscribing, so you can already assume that all of them are big fans, but of my biggest fans, who are the biggest fans? Who's paying attention? Who's the most engaged, right? So they can look out and see, you know, who's got the rarest NFTs or the highest concentration of NFTs or whatever it is, they can figure out. And what they can then do is they can inject perks into these NFTs after acquisition, right? So, you know, that they can, maybe they're doing an underplay show with a small venue, like a record store day or a 100 capacity venue pre-album, you know, whatever, right? And maybe they want to give away all the tickets for free, but they want to make sure it's their biggest fans, right? Because as an artist, that's actually a compelling proposition. You want to make sure that the people that are there for your underplay show are the ones that really give a shit, right? Sorry, can we swear on this? I've said it anyway. So, you know, you can look out into the community and be like, okay, well, cool. Who are my 100 biggest fans in London, Stockholm, New York, wherever, right? And you can know that, right? And you can say, okay, well, I'm going to inject a free ticket for this show into these NFTs because these people live in London, Stockholm, New York, wherever, and they've got these NFTs. So the NFT then it takes on a life of its own. It has a value, right? And it's not just about underplay shows. It could be anything. You know, it could be a meet and greet. It could be something on platform. You know, we can create limited chat rooms, limited voice rooms, limited video call rooms that the users can have discussions in. So the artist, or it could be a discount, a free ticket for a future tour, 20 quid off a t-shirt, whatever, you know, whatever they want, right? You know, so the NFTs then become these, you know, these markers of like, okay, I can see you as an artist. I can see you as a fan. It's the reason fans go to the front row. They want to be seen by their artist. I can see you are a huge fan, and I'm going to reward that. It's the artist directly reaching out to you and deciding that you deserve this, right? So that's very powerful for a fan, but it's also very powerful for an artist. It's giving them not just data that they don't have access to, but actionable data because they can take that and use it. Where it beats the scalpers is that acquiring an NFT doesn't guarantee you a perk because it's up to the artist.
Yeah, but okay, then so this I understand that, but we've seen this happen to NBA Top Shots, whereas you couldn't even get one of the packs. And people will buy numerous packs unless they put a limit on there. Now, what's stopping a whale from coming in and saying, okay, then look, I know how your system works. That may be my favorite artist, but I'm just going to buy as many tickets as possible, or the limit them out every time you do it. Collect the NFTs and sell the ticket on the secondary market. But then they collect the NFTs. So on the way it looks, they look like the biggest fan. They don't have to attend. They don't have, but they look what the biggest fan because they got all the NFTs. What stopped? I know it's why would somebody do that? But people do, let's face it. So
absolutely.
Some people abuse the system. You know what I mean?
So the tickets are settled via the Ticketmaster Partner API. So that's, you know, they already have systems in place to prevent scalpers. So the tickets are fine. In terms of the merchandise, in order to get access to the artist merch store in the first place, you have to be a paid subscriber. Now, when you're talking about whales and investors, there is absolutely zero data to show that they have those behaviors. To subscribe to an artist and be quick enough off the mark to do that, right? And if they're going to do bots, then they have to pay a subscription for every single bot, which they're not going to do. It doesn't make financial sense because paying all of those subscriptions on the off chance that not only you get the right NFT, but that the artist later injects a perk into it. Also, the time decay is an issue because an artist might inject a perk into an NFT one year after it was acquired, right? Because the artist doesn't care. They're just like, okay, well, where are the rarest ones, right? It doesn't matter when it was acquired. So like all of these factors, like there is absolutely zero data that scalpers or whales will wear any of this. Where the whales will come into the ecosystem, because you know, what Sonx was built to do is to reward fan behaviors that we have years and years and years of data to show that fans show these behaviors. How can we reward those, right? So that's what it was built to do. And what that also does is, as much as possible, mitigates entry to the market at the primary entry to the market of people who are not fans, right? That was the goal, that's the intention, right? Now, where the whales and investors and that kind of user will come in is the secondary marketplace, which is what Lee actually handed over to me for. So apologies, Lee, I've been rambling for 5 minutes. But so the secondary marketplace is where users, fans can buy and sell their NFTs to each other, right? Yeah. Now, the currency on the secondary marketplace is only our utility token, Sonx coin. So there's no fiat currency on the secondary marketplace. Now, obviously, there's nothing stopping a whale from, you know, setting up a Sonx account, buying a whole bunch of Sonx coin on, you know, a decentralized exchange somewhere, transferring it into their Sonx account and just buying up the best stuff, right? But there's two things there. Firstly, fans have an emotional attachment to assets that investors don't have, right? Which means they're less likely to sell the rarest ones, right? Sure. And secondly, when they do, I mean, look, you know, the value of something will get to a point where you're just like, I'm tapping out. I can't afford to hold on to it, right? No matter how good it is, you know. So, you know, that will happen. And when that does happen, you know, maybe another fan buys it, maybe a whale comes in and buys it and is speculating on the future value. But what's happened is, rather than, you know, I gave the example of Grimes, and I don't want to single her out because there's a lot of artists that have done it. But, you know, where that, you know, sale direct to the market and direct to whales cut the fans out, what happens here is you're making whales out of fans. The real goal for artists, by the way, is either to make fans out of investors, which is never going to happen because they don't display the behaviors, or make investors out of fans, which at the moment isn't going to happen because the majority of them don't have the resources. What this does is gives them the resources, because when whales do come in, who are they making rich? Okay, the artist gets a 20% royalty at the sale, right? The platform takes its fee, but the rest, which is the vast majority of that sale, goes to the user selling it. And what behaviors do they have? What do we know about them? They spend their money on artists, right? So where's that money going? It's going back to the artist anyway, right? So rather than making rich people that aren't going to buy your stuff and aren't going to invest in you emotionally or financially long term, it's the complete opposite. You're making whales out of people who already do spend money on you. And that's the magic of Sonx, both for the fan and for the artists.
I love that, Lewis. I love that. I love the way you explained it too. I mean, even though I challenge you, just to question, because people may be asking this question, but sure, you can explain. So yeah, okay, that's fair enough. I mean, Lewis, I mean, Lee, let's go on to the talents, people that are coming in to this. Like, what kind of people? What kind of have you got?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's still top secret because we want it we want to make sure that there's a big, you know, marketing campaign and a surprise when we do unveil whoever it is. But I will say this, one thing that's super important about Sonx, and I kind of led onto it earlier on when I was talking about the artists that I saw at NFTLA, is that, you know, it is really important that we have artists that are established, that optically make the brand seem legit, etc. However, it's even more important to me that we have artists on the platform that can really earn a living off of what they make on Sonx. And that to me is the biggest, you know, if not one of the biggest, you know, values behind the brand, and one of the biggest, you know, reasons why we're doing this. It's about artists being able to make a living off of their music and use that money to continue making music. And so what I mean by that is that what you will see from Sonx is a scope of artists. You will see established artists that people recognize. You also will see diversity of genre, because I feel like some platforms, some popular social media platforms leave out genres like jazz and classical and rock, and, you know, rock has some of the most intense fans ever, but also you'll see a diversity of market too. You know, when you look at what's going on in Africa or Latin American artists, the fandom there compared to the US or the UK or the EU is completely different. Like, these fans want to live in the same house as the artists that they follow, and so K-pop, crazy. Exactly. So that, to me, you know, as somebody that is working on the talent side, that is the most exciting part, is being able to really get involved with artists that, you know, we aren't so accustomed with, and figuring out what makes their fans tick as well. But more than that, it's working with artists that aren't established yet, that might not be breaking for a while, but saying, at Sonx, you're able to continue making a living off of the money you make here.
Yeah, and I think that's a great approach, because I feel that the NFT space, especially at the start, it was all about making money, flips and whatnot. It turned into that. But I feel that in order for the space to grow, we need platforms, tools to help people grow themselves within the space, which that's something that you guys are focusing on. And today, I haven't really seen any other platforms that are focusing the approach that you've taken. However, and I'll ask this question because it's recent. What about, you talked about subscription, you talked about followers, talked about fandom. So Instagram have now talked about they've got the subscribing, they've got the following, they've got all the attention. They're talking about they're going to have NFTs and whatnot. Are they competition now? I mean, that they consider competition?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go on.
I'll go. I think, look, anyone that is taking attention from anyone else is competition, right? Like in the attention economy. So to that end, Instagram were competition before this announcement, right? Like even like Netflix, Disney Plus, fucking whatever, right? Like it's all competition, because at the end of the day, every platform wants as much idle time as possible, right? I think the difference here is about, and I think where Instagram are going to struggle, it's about positioning and it's about habit. Lee and I were discussing this the other day, and he made a really, really great point. People aren't used to spending money on Instagram. They announced shopping, and everyone thought it was going to change the world. It was going to be like the next boom of e-commerce, and it hasn't. It's not a fantastic user experience, and nobody really bothers. Like, I mean, not that I'm aware of, I don't know anyone that has bought anything from Instagram shopping, and I'd love to know if you guys do, but and that's not to kind of like to kind of shit on Instagram or anything. It's just that I think the behaviors, and you can tell, like I said at the top of the call, right? Like I'm obsessed with user behaviors and fan behaviors. Mm-hmm. There is no data to show that anyone wants to spend money in Instagram, and in fact, there is data to show that they don't.
Okay. Well, I guess I have. I agree, but I also have a different viewpoint. I love the fact they're doing NFTs. I think it's amazing. I want Twitter and Snapchat and TikTok. I want everyone to do it, because it helps us in terms of getting people to understand what NFTs are. Right. The more that it becomes part of the zeitgeist, the better it is for us, because Sonx isn't about having every single person on a platform. It's about the people who want to be seen as an individual by the artist, joining a community. Instagram will never be a community platform. It's never going to be that. And if you watched where the pendulum is going, my friend's got a platform called Somewhere Good, and it's about creating a safe space for diverse voices to have real conversation. And she's taking people from Twitter to her platform because people are feeling the need to be in slightly smaller spaces where they can be seen by people that think the same as them. And you're never going to have that with Instagram. So I think it's great for us, because, I get asked every single day, what is an NFT? What are you actually doing? And all that kind of stuff. And if Instagram can help us get people to understand what that is, then I think that's fantastic. I think it's amazing. Will Instagram change the artist's current issue of not having money from what they're doing? I will say no. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're suddenly going to make so much money from their Instagram profile without being able to give their users a different experience to make them feel like they should have to spend more money with them. That's number one. Number two, it doesn't change the fact that we are still focusing on rewarding fans for their engagement in a way that Instagram doesn't, and I don't think will for a while. So, I welcome it. I think it's exciting. I think, a lot of people sometimes when they see the big players doing things like the shopping example that Lewis gave, they decide that they're going to change their whole strategy and it's all over because the big boss is coming in and taking over. I welcome it. I think it's amazing, and I want everyone to do it.
Yeah, I guess that your job is to explain to the artists the benefits of what you're bringing and just bring them onto your platform. It still can be on Instagram, but I guess that if they're pushing what you're doing on Instagram
Yeah.
to bring over the hardcore fans, then I guess it's going to be beneficial for you. So yeah, I get.
The hardcore fans at the moment have no identity on the artist profile on Instagram. None. They're just in a sea of all the other people that, you know, are typing, you know, I commented first, or, you know, that artist looks like crap, or whatever. You know, they're in a...
When are you coming to Brazil?
That's
always the one, isn't it? When are you coming to Brazil, or when are you coming to Mexico?
They're in a, you know, just a large crowd of people. Yeah. But you see how fans react at a live show when the artist points to them and can see them as an individual. That is what we're offering, the opportunity for the artist not to just know what your Instagram handle is, but to understand that you are different from the crowd.
Yeah, and another thing that you guys focus on, what I've seen in the video, is that for the artist to like kind of get rid of all the trolling and the negative behavior and whatnot. If you have we assume that the hardcore fans are not going to be doing that. So having a community that is just very encouraging and they want you to win, and by you winning, they win. I think that behavior is great, which hasn't really happened.
No, 100%. I think that, like, you know, I worked with talent, not just music talent, but talent across the board that really was suffering with the amount of negativity they get on these platforms that are so big. And it's really hard for these platforms to moderate such large amounts of people. And they, you know, they want to have a space which they can test new music, or they can ask questions about their last music video, or where they should tour next, and all that kind of stuff, without the negativity and nastiness, frankly, that goes on those platforms. And, you know, for us, there is no anonymous profiles. You know, you cannot join Sonx and want to participate in an AMA with an artist as an anonymous person, because by subscribing, you're telling me that you want the artist to see you as an individual. Why are you paying to be here to be anonymous?
Question. Okay, so let me throw something at you. Maybe you guys have thought this already. So obviously Web3, we got obviously these Bored Apes, we got these avatars. So someone who is an avatar doesn't really reveal themselves, but they're an avatar. How do they join the platform, or is that not an option?
Well, that's not what I mean by anonymous. I think what I mean is there is no real verification process on Instagram. So you can still have a username. Don't get me wrong, and you can still choose what your picture is. But you went through a verification process for me to see that you're a human being and that you are participating. So that you know, if for some reason you decide that you hate this artist and vitriol starts to come out on the AMA or the chat room, we can identify who you are and remove you from that AMA, or stop you from communicating with that artist, at least in a way that you can't do on Instagram. Because right now on Instagram, I don't even think you have to put your email in anymore. You put your username and a password and you're all set. You can go. And that's not what we're doing here.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's just a quick one on the onboarding. It's kind of basic KYC, but also no one can get access to any of the communities on Sonx without having previously entered their billing details, and those being verified. So, you know, obviously we do have like a freemium tier, like a pay-as-you-go tier. So you don't have to pay for everything. You know, you can kind of dip in and out, but you can't access any of it without having those on file. So it's a very basic KYC layer. But what that means is that if we end up having to remove a user from an artist community because of trolling or you know, kind of like breaking community guidelines, if that user goes and sets up another profile, we'll know it's the same user because they have to put their payment details in. So but by doing this, we can protect the artist, but also the other fans, the community. They don't want to see that stuff either. You know, it's we can create these safe spaces. And actually, I think that's a really interesting point, because you look at the way artists kind of you know, come out with new material. They kind of hunker down and they go into themselves and they kind of write it and they share it, you know, their manager and their label, and no one really sees it. And I get that, because, you know, they have to control the narrative and the PR and all the rest of it. But there's another side to it, which is if it's shit, they don't want anyone to see it or to hear it, right? And I get that, but the problem with that is that when you put that music out, it's kind of this hold your breath moment, because, you know, you might be surrounded by yes men, or you might be in a bubble or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So you don't know how that reaction is going to be. And I think having a kind of a halfway house a safe space where you can kind of test demos and not even necessarily demos. You can also, you can figure out where clusters of fans are that you didn't realize. You can find new tour locations. You can ask questions. You can be honest about yourself, your personality, your struggles. You can do all of these things. You can't do that publicly. It just, the world's too brutal. I don't like that that's the case, but it's true.
Okay, so tell me about, if you're an artist that you're signed to a label, like there's going to be a lot of people in these positions. They're signed to a label. What incentive or what approach will they take to join the platform? Or are you guys working with labels also? Tell me.
Yeah, we're talking to talent that are signed. And, at the end of the day, you have some artists that have decided to sign a 360 deal, which means that the revenue that they make from Sonx, the label, will be able to recoup. Or you have some artists that just have a deal which is focused on their recorded music and want to make additional money. At the end of the day, it's really down to the relationship that the artist has with the label. Lewis kind of spoke about this before. We aren't one of these Web3 companies that is kind of like, we're going to tear down the establishment and not work with no one, and we're going to build the music industry from the ground up from tomorrow. Like, no, we are more than happy to work with players that are already in the music industry. And us being a Web2 to Web3 platform, it means that we can really be a bridge for a lot of these companies that do need to move forward. As you said at the top of this podcast, the music industry hasn't really moved in the digital space since streaming platforms, and a lot of them are scared to do that. We were having a call with one, and we're looking at being an example of them, or working with them through case studies to figure out how they should move forward with their own Web3 strategy. And I love that. It's not about denying the fact that labels own 75% of the music industry. It's about saying, how can we work with you in a way that benefits your talent, that clearly wants to make more money, but also helps you understand that the industry is changing, and we want you to be part of that.
So do you think that these guys, they see the changes? You're talking about, okay, this is what we're doing now, and they've got the potential to make a lot more money. As the artist sees that, what do you think that's going to change over time? That people are going to be more independent, and they're not going to want to get signed?
I said at the top, people are going to recognize their own power. And you have artists now who are being signed from TikTok with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. And they're going to say to themselves, I can actually continue to make my own projects and my own work without the need of a label. Or you're going to have some artists who, my favorite artist is Beyonce, and Beyonce was signed to Sony, and I want to have a record deal and be signed to Sony because I want that to be part of my story, and I want to make sure that I can stand outside Times Square with a billboard and say that I'm a Sony artist. That is still a dream for a lot of artists, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. So I don't think it is a one size fits all for everyone. I think that some artists are going to recognize their own power and like the idea of being independent. They don't really care about, wanting to be with a label. And you're going to have some artists that are like, actually, I still want to do that, and I still want to be part of, I still want that. I still want to have that experience because that is my dream. And I think that like what we're trying to do is create a brand that has the flexibility to work with artists that are independent, to work with artists that are signed, to work with artists that have been signed and now independent. Like, it's hopefully an opportunity for many different kinds of people.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be a place for labels. Like, I think, like any business, they'll have to diversify their offerings. They'll have to figure out new landscapes. I think that's fair of any business. That's just a normal thing that has to happen. But yeah, I agree with Lee. I don't think, I think it would be very strange if we got to a place where every artist was independent, because every artist is different. Some artists, need independence and need their own space and will rebel against anyone trying to control what they're doing. Some artists are completely the opposite. They need the structure and the framework to navigate these things for them so that they can just focus on their art and nothing else. Yeah. And I think both of those are equally valid. And the beauty of Web3 is that it can hypothetically, potentially tear down the system, man. Like, it can do that. I think it's very unlikely that will happen in the majority of cases, because businesses will just diversify their understanding of the landscape. I think what's more likely to happen is that a lot of really exciting inventions will be made that will provide bridges between what people don't know and what they want to do. And I think what you have, with talking about kind of the music industry, and then the Web3 music industry, which are very separate things, that are trying to bridge that gap. I think there's like a fence in the middle and nobody knows what's happening on the other side of the fence, right? And I think Sonx is the kind of, the bridge over that, right? Because, obviously with our background and with our network, we understand a lot of the traditional music industry. We also understand, a lot of the tech industry and a lot of the Web3 industry. So it's about bridging that gap. And I think the same can be said of audiences. You either have people who are Web3 native that just don't understand why people are even bothering with Web2 anymore. And then you have people on the other side of the fence that are like, I don't understand what this is and it's weird and scary to me. I mean, let's be completely honest about this. There's as much positive innovations and positive press as there are for Web3 projects. There's also a hell of a lot of negative press. Yeah. And I think it comes from a position of fear. And you look at the market now, it's being absolutely obliterated. A lot of that is to do with the Russia situation, and that's a whole other conversation. But, people are using that and saying like, oh, this is the end of crypto. And it's like, no, it's crashed a whole load of times. It always recovers, right? And it always recovers bigger. And I think it's, it's interesting that people will always have a negative bias towards things that they don't understand. The way to fix that is to collaborate with both sides of the fence, right? And make the solution in the middle. And that's what we're doing with Sonx.
But also, Sean, don't get it twisted. You don't think these labels are doing new contracts that say NFTs, anything that you do in Web3 is mine.
Yeah. Well, this is
don't get it twisted. Like, this is already happening. They're already rejigging these contracts to make sure that they don't lose out on any future success in this space with artists that they've signed. So,
so this is what it is. I think you guys, I feel that based on your position, you guys are going to play a massive part on the onboarding process, which I think is important, educating people. I feel that from a creative perspective, a lot of people look in the space and think we can make lots of money, but then you still have to market yourself. You still have to put yourself out there. You still have to connect with you. There's still work to be done. Do you guys help people with that, the marketing aspect? Because I feel that that's what a label brings. A major would give them the distribution and put them out into the real world, and then they can connect with so many people to get the sales. But as an independent artist, and you don't know how to market yourself or get yourself out there, what would they do? What advice would you give them? Or have you got?
Yeah, I think obviously, just like some of our competitors, we're hoping to work, as I said, with a full scope of artists. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that we can market certain artists in platform, but also there'll be artists that we will want to market outside in the real world and digitally as well. And it has to be, from my point of view, when I am speaking to people that are working with us in marketing, it has to come across like there's a real balance between the artists that are established that we are working with because they're recognizable and people will take interest in the brand, but then artists that are independent and we just support because they really get Web3, or we really like their music, or they're someone that we really want to associate with our brand, or we want to do a long-term partnership, and that means that working with them from day one to when they're a huge success. And so absolutely, I think that unlike, maybe if you're talking about OnlyFans or Patreon, they don't really tend to, because they're not music focused, they don't tend to market any talent. Because we do have a focus here, when you do see that Sonx marketing, you will see us wanting to market and create as much exposure for that new talent as possible.
Collaboration is a big part of Web3, and are you guys going to have that as a possibility for artists on the platform to collaborate with other artists and create something together?
Oh yeah. It's not just collaboration with other artists. Like, because my experience is fashion, entertainment, and music, it's collaboration with other brands outside of the platform, and helping to sync artists with new designers or new streetwear brands. If we're saying come to Sonx, come and subscribe, the merch that's already on their website, you've already seen that. So we got to make sure that the merch or the products that's on their platform feel like limited edition products. You know what I mean? And so it's not just collaboration with other artists, which is absolutely something that we want to be able to execute, but it's collaboration with you know, NFT artists, us setting that up, you know, collaboration with fashion designers, us setting that up, collaboration with production companies that can really help with artist content or Sonx content that will live on the platform. I think that collaboration is, you know, other than content, commerce, and community, you know, if we're going to have a fourth C, it would be collaboration. It's all about that.
Yeah. And another thing, we had a brief conversation before, Lee, and I was talking about it'd be great for an idea to have the fans to be able to create NFTs for the artists. So like,
well,
stuff
Sean.
like photography. There's going to be a lot of talent in there. Is it?
Well. I mean, I feel like we've spoken about a lot, Sean. Yeah. If I'm being honest with you.
Come on, you come on here. You don't hold nothing back. It's all we're all transparent. We're all transparent. Everything out there.
You know, if you know, Lewis has spoken a lot about us not inventing behavior, and behavior that already exists is fan created art of artists, you know, fan created merch of artists. And so I think it would be almost rude for us not to allow fans to be able to do that on Sonx, right?
Yeah, that would be amazing. I think, like, as a matter of artists brought your piece at your NFT, which is
imagine if an artist endorsed your piece. You go back and you think about Rihanna, who sued Topshop, I think, or River Island, I can't remember which one, but she sued them because they were making t-shirts of her album on it. Do you know what I mean? It's a big economy, like artist merch that isn't by the artist. You know what I mean? And so if you imagine having a creator, as you said, that was making merch or making you know, NFTs of that artist, and having the artist endorse that fan, that's incredible. You've made an influencer out of that fan, and so I couldn't imagine us not doing something like that.
Are we gonna have like the artists creating PFP projects, creating avatars, and then they're giving the IP for the fans?
Wow, I mean, Sean. This
is the behavior of the space. I'd love to see that. Like, there's so many opportunities, but if these things you're looking at, or just something down the line.
That is definitely, I would say, a down the line thing. I think, though, you know, one thing that I want to make sure is that there is flexibility on Sonx, and we want to make sure, and that's obviously something that is really important to Web3, is the freedom to do things. And so we don't want to create an environment that feels like it's stifling creativity in any way. And so I can definitely imagine all those things in some form being available on Sonx.
So what about, probably Lewis, you can jump in on this interoperability in regards to, let's say there's a few more other platforms, or people have been collecting NFTs of this artist for a while, and can they bring that wallet in, and it links with your, is that possible to link with your platform, and then you can, it will just all have to be in Sonx? Like,
you can, so okay, one of the most important parts of Sonx is, you know, and I'm going to come back to this example again, the kind of like the bedroom shrine or the corkboard or whatever it is, you know, fans have this, you know, deep-seated need to collect, and not just collect, but to show, right? So it's the collector's mentality, and it's also the kind of, you know, the bragging rights, or the, you know, the whatever, which, you know, so the fan profiles on Sonx are where that happens, right? So you can organize, I don't know if you remember like MySpace, and you could do your top friends, right? And you could say, like, right, anyway, I'm showing my age now, but anyway. Sorry, say again.
What was the owner's name to this MySpace? Who owned it? What's his name?
Was it Tom?
Tom, innit? Because he was everyone's friend. He was always...
Yeah. When you first started, he was just there at his computer, like, with his profile picture. Anyway, but yeah, you could organize your top friends. I think it was 6 you could have, whatever. Anyway, it's a weird segue, but yeah, with your Sonx profile, you can highlight your favorite NFTs, and you can show people, you know, what's important to you, because when you get an NFT, it's because you bought something that was important to you, right? You know, be that from another user or direct from the artist. So, you know, that's going to be a thing. You know, we are discussing the interoperability about bringing in other NFTs and displaying them in the same way. The difference, and also with Sonx NFTs, you can transfer them out as well. The difference is NFTs that are owned within Sonx can be awarded perks. You know, the artist can inject perks into them, as I've said, and they can be sold on the marketplace. Obviously, they can be sold on other marketplaces too. A lot of the perks are awarded on platform. and redeemed on platform, sorry. So, it might be access to something in the artist community that's on the platform. It might be access to a chat and experience that the artist is creating on the platform, or, a discount in their store, or like a sticker even, because there's even like really sort of like low level simple ones that they can give to more people, like, chat stickers and things like that. So if you transfer those NFTs out to, OpenSea, for example, to display them there, you can do that. That's fine. You'll lose the ability to use whatever that NFT gives you on the platform, but you can transfer it back in and it'll reappear again, right? And similarly with NFTs that you transfer in from elsewhere, you'll be able to display them on your profile, but they're not going to have any perks injected into them. They're not going to be, so it's decentralized. You have ownership of your assets. You can move them as you like. There is another layer of reward on top of that, which exists within the platform.
Okay, cool. So are you guys looking into, obviously we're talking about Web3, metaverse, massive buzzword. Are you guys looking into doing something within the metaverse? Because you talked about collaboration earlier on, Lee, and that's digital fashion. I think that's going to be a massive thing, and being able to wear, obviously, the merch or whatnot within these realms, whether it's one you create or Decentraland and whatnot. Is this something that is talked about or looked to do in the future?
We're looking at it. We're very early stages. Okay. We're not committing to saying anything about it just yet. It may or may not happen. It's something that we are very aware of.
Yeah, but also, Sean, I'm more focused right now. I think that some of the metaverse projects I've seen have been great and some not so great. But where we're focused is more about how can we take what we've created digitally and bring it into physical spaces. So how can we take the experiences that fans are having on Sonx and bring them into physical spaces? So is it about adding more utility into their NFTs that they, get rewarded with in person? Is it about allowing them to use their Sonx coin in actual event spaces? Is it about partnering with festivals and having our own stage so that we can promote artists in real life? These are the things that are more interesting to me than the metaverse right now. I think that it's not something that we can ignore because it is very important and is part of the vernacular when people are talking about NFTs and Web3 and crypto, etc. However, I'm more interested in how can we take what we're doing, as I said, in the digital space and bring it into the real world.
Okay, fair enough. So I want to know a bit more about what you guys individually. I mean, are you guys collecting NFTs yourself? Like, is that something you're doing? Are you into the whole PFP thing? Are you collecting music NFTs or anything else? Like, go on, Lewis.
Okay, so for me, like music NFTs, as I said before, it's very much about like master rights and ownership of that. And that's, I mean, look, as an asset class, I understand the value in it, but in terms of like, my collector's instinct and cultural signaling and what I'm interested in, that's just not it for me. And nor are PFPs. I do collect NFTs, okay. I'm very selective and have a very tiny collection. I'm a lot more in terms of, if I'm buying for investment, I'm a lot more interested in crypto, which is obviously very painful right now because everything's hitting the floor. I collect NFTs as well, but I'm very picky and have a very small collection.
What about yourself, Lee?
No, I'm saving all my money to buy the Sonx NFTs and artist NFTs that will be on Sonx. So that's unfortunately,
yeah. I was going to say, you can tell one of us is media trained, right? Like, yeah.
Okay, so it's apart from, we talked about NFTs, music, obviously the platform. I would just talking about NFTs in general. I mean, it's obviously disrupting the music industry. We talked a bit about the fashion side of it. Is there anything that you're excited about for the industries that you really think it's going to disrupt or hasn't disrupted yet that you think that the NFTs will be amazing for? Because it's more than art, isn't it? And it's going to be more than just, like you said, ownership of masters. So anyone can answer this. Any thoughts?
I mean, my interest definitely is, and it's so funny because I don't actually watch sports really. Like, right. I might watch a few like Olympic games and tennis, like Wimbledon and shit, but I'm not like a huge sport fan. But like, I am interested to see. I mean, some of what I've seen recently hasn't been so great. I'm glad that they've been reactive to it and wanting to try things though. And I really like that. I think that there's some athletes that have a similar experience to musicians, although it's very different because they get paid a lot more. But they, you know, some are questioning, you know, sports cards, for example, and the fact that they don't get any money off of those sports cards. And so it's very interesting to me to see how sport is going to react to Web3. I think there's obviously a lot of money in it, which is really, really interesting. And, you know, sport fandom is crazy as well. And I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is the foundation of what people, for example, who have supported NBA teams and stars forever have already been doing. So I'm really interested to see where sport go with it, because I think they're going to get there a lot faster than music or film or any of those, or fashion, for example. So yeah.
Okay, what about you, Lewis?
I think there has been some incredible innovations. I think what POAP are doing for me is just incredibly interesting. You know, I spoke a lot about you know, how users can kind of, you know, culturally signal and show what's important to them. It's also something Gary Vee talks about a lot. It's like, why do you buy a Ferrari instead of a Nissan, or like, why do you buy Adidas shoes instead of, you know, Primark or whatever, right? Like there's a reason for all of these things. Cultural signaling is very important, but also, you know, memories. If you look at the behavior on Web 2 over the last decade or so, it's all been about showing everyone what you're doing. And I think tokenizing that, and also the interesting thing about POAP is it's a very broad brief, and it can be the use cases are huge. The number of applications for it are enormous. I think real estate is a massive one. Like how that hasn't gotten bigger is beyond me. There's an interesting company called Labs Group, which are doing really interesting stuff in real estate, and I think is fantastic. But what I also find interesting is, like, when you're trying to explain what a smart contract is to someone, the easiest analogy is actually the deed of a house, right? So like the fact that like the real estate industry actually has been doing this for centuries, right? You know, like blockchain is catching up, right? So what I find interesting about that is that it's already how that industry works. So I think that's like a really easy fit. I think photography is a massive area for growth. Like it just makes so much sense to me, that because if you think about the experience of photography, you take your pictures, you put them on what's that site like Flickr, or you know, you might upload them to libraries like Getty or whatever, in the hope that someone's going to find them amongst a sea of other photos, and then you get a fraction of a crappy license fee, right? No, do you know what? I'm going to go and take pictures of what I want. What Web3 enables creators to do is find their niche and just bully it, right? Like, because normally it's sort of like, oh, I need to do something that people are going to like so that I can find people. But what Web3 enables is, no, I'm going to do my niche and the people are going to find me because they're going to understand the niche. Right? I think that's a lot more empowering for creators. But I think photography is one of those industries that's so ready to be disrupted. It'll feel, you know, on behalf of the creator. I think Makerspace is interesting, or anything that's doing, you know, like fine art sales, because again, it's that whole thing of verification and authentication of originality, you know, that's so important for art and antiques as well. Although antiques is an interesting one because, you know, if you think about the you know, perhaps I'm being a bit stereotypical, but the people involved in that industry tend to be kind of older and not so much connected with technology. But I think again, it's ripe for disruption. But yeah, like that's a very big and broad answer, but there's just so much happening that's exciting. I think it's amazing. And back to a point of interoperability, I mean, there's so many of these things that plug into each other. I think POAP, for example, it would make a hell of a lot of sense for like users on Sonx going to a concert, and you know, maybe the artist is creating POAPs that they share with everyone that was at the concert, and they can verify attendance from the tickets that they, you know, the NFTs that they get on. So like all of that kind of stuff, I think is amazing.
I'm gonna throw something out there, and I want you guys to kind of give me an idea of how that would work. So I think, okay, what about marriage, prenups with NFTs?
Wow.
And so give me, now you heard, you probably know where I'm going with that. Is like, how do you think that would work? Do you think that was a great case of when you get married, you use? No,
I don't. I absolutely don't. And I tell you why. When there's a prenup, it means typically it means that either one partner is significantly wealthier than the other, or they expect to be fairly soon, right? I think the decentralized and transparent nature of assets on the blockchain would terrify the wealthier partner from proffering that as an idea, because they wouldn't want to show the other person all their asset.
From, if you agree, like there's, I mean, this is going off something else, but if you agree to something, so from very early.
This is not where I saw this conversation going.
NFT Talks, but it's just anything we go everywhere with it. So if you agree to something early, then that's it. Like, you don't even have to go to court. If there's a split, then there will be the money distributed, however it was set up.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a wider question. I think contracts, and I mean paper contracts, traditional contracts becoming smart contracts, I think is going to be a real slow burn, but it's definitely going to happen, because for all the reasons that you've said, it's litigation is ruinously expensive. I think for anything civil or business related, it makes sense that the contracts would be smart contracts, because it removes the threat of court. It's automated, right? The problem with that is you're putting a lot of rich and influential people out of work, right? There's a lot of people make a lot of money out of understanding the law and representing people, right? So it's give and take, and that's why it's a slow burn, because I think the lawyers are all going to become programmers, and actually that's not a joke. That's literal, because you need programmers to create your smart contracts, and you need lawyers to create contracts. So I think that's where that's going to go, but I think that's going to take a long time.
Okay, Lee, you see your thoughts on that?
I mean, the thing is that, like, from the divorces that I've seen, a lot of the stuff that makes it complicated isn't the stuff that's written. It's all emotional.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, I feel like, I think it would be really good. I think it'd be really good, just because, like,
you're the romantic, Lee.
Yeah.
Always
I think it would be amazing. I mean, now I have something to look after, so I get it. I think if I was the person who was broke, it would be like miserable. If I was the one who was joining the marriage and didn't have anything, then it would be a horrible thing for me.
You agree on? This is something you agree on. You don't have to agree. You have to agree on it. You get married and you.
That's true too. That's true too.
These things
I think it's great. I think anything that is going to help that process, which I think sometimes can be very unfair to one person in the duo, I think is great. So I think yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
I can see what's going to happen first thing tomorrow morning is our blockchain developer Ignis, who's fucking genius by the way, is going to get a really weird email from Lee.
Yeah,
I'm not engaged.
I mean, Lee doesn't have anyone to have a prenup with at the moment.
No,
but I'm sure he's gonna get that in and get it done.
100%, because I'm such a fan of pre-nubs and post-nubs and any other nubs you can have. So 100%, yeah.
That makes sense. So okay, cool. So look, we've talked about so many things up to the platform, which is amazing. When is the launch? When are you actually getting everything out there?
You want me to take that one? Yes. So we are going straight into case studies over the summer. We're working with an assortment of artists, a lot of the kinds of artists that I mentioned earlier on. But we are looking towards a soft launch later on in the year, and then a major launch, which will get tired of seeing us. That will be next year, February. But we're using the summer to sort of get our learnings about what the live offering will be. And then towards the end of the year, really start to hone in on that. And then next year, really shout and scream about everything that we're doing. So, it in a sense, it's the summer is really exciting time for us, because it's really us, starting to show everything that we've been working on. But I think, next year, as I said, you're going to get tired of seeing Sonx on your feed and outside on your billboards, mate.
Right, I look forward to that. I look forward to it. Where can?
Oh, also, I forgot. Hopefully, we'll be at your event as well. I don't know if you've already started.
That's something we can keep quiet for now. But
yeah.
Something we can do, bringing it to the UK and showcasing what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
Where can we find you guys? Like, anyone that wants to contact you guys individually, or if you just want to go through Sonx, like where's the best place?
Yeah, so sonx.app on Instagram. Sonx.app is the website as well. If you're following us on Twitter, it's just Sonx, Sonx. And if you want to follow me individually, it's Lee Gray _.
Lewis?
And for me, obviously all the business ones are the same, but for me on Twitter, it's Lewis Sonx, LEWIS and on Instagram, it's Lewis J Donovan, LEWIS J DONOVAN.
Love that. So guys, there you go. Like, this is the new platform that is preparing for the fans and the creatives. Well, I'm sure you're going to move away from musicians in the future, aren't you?
Who knows?
That's great for now. But yeah, look, thank you guys for coming on and dropping so much value. I think it's a sign what you guys are doing. Well positioned, credible people talking about, I believe, in what they can deliver and what they're going to say they're going to do. So yeah, very exciting times. But thank you everyone for listening. Everyone stay listening and stay blessed.